Web3 nomads. Everywhere jobs for anywhere people.
Okay, so we're back. And we're hoping that we don't get more technical issues. This is our fifth take of today's stream. I don't know why we bother. The apes don't send us feet pics. They don't send us cleavage pics. And yet we still persevere. Here we are. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Five tries later, the stress and the anxiety on a Friday is just running through the veins. It's not even 8 a.m. here in the UK. It's bone bollock cold, and it's stinky and crashing. Christ. Happy Friday, boys.
My fault. My original Mac has the processing power of a cheese toastie. So,
Cheese.
So yeah, we're running on the new Mac now, but yeah, there we are. What are we going to talk about? Liquid staking.
Apparently there's drugs going around, so we need to talk about drugs.
Bullish on drugs. Yeah, no, we're gonna get through some projects in the liquid staking derivatives landscape. I know it's quite a topical conversation at the minute with Shanghai coming up. Just as a brief overview, Shanghai is going to allow the Ethereum that's being staked on the Beacon chain to allow proof of stake security to occur since long before the merge. I think pulling up the dates now, Beacon chain was shipped on the 1st of December 2020. Formalized proof of stake of Ethereum's consensus mechanism with the merge happening on the September 15th, 2022. So people being locked up for, effectively not being able to stake for a hell of a long time now. We've seen the likes of your Lidos and Rocket Pools and a couple of others that we're going to get into really start to pick up, and their own native tokens start to run this week. And the anticipation from my perspective is as soon as people can start to unstake, and then they get the optionality of being able to go and restake with Lido or Rocket Pool, StakeWise, Stader, Frax, Redacted Cartel with Dinero. This is going to create increased competition in that space. And we'll get into this a little bit further afield, and we need to have a look at the projects that benefit from that competition. So, Dan, you kind of brought a couple up in the newsletter, but I think you picked out the only one that I didn't actually have in the portfolio. So I don't know if you want to get into that. While you're doing that, I'm gonna try and find the data on the average price of Ethereum whilst the Beacon chain went live. So when the majority of the first initial stakes happened in December 2020, I'm going to find out the price so we can see if people are in profit, in loss, and try and work it out from there. But if you want to get into some of the assets that we covered in the newsletter the other week, then I'll be behind the scenes looking at this.
Yeah, I'll share my screen as well. So this post from your boy Pickle has aged extremely well. So we brought this one up earlier in the month in the newsletter, and it was interesting to see what he was saying about Frax, but more importantly, Frax ETH, which is kind of like their LSD version. But I guess the TLDR, if we come round to here, so he's talking about what happens after Shanghai. There's obviously going to be three things that potentially can happen. Obviously, sell some of the ETH that's directly staked, leave it staked, or then move it. So move it to LSDs for additional DeFi functionality. But what's quite interesting is, and I hadn't realized this because I hadn't done much research then, but if you look at staked Frax ETH, it becomes more tax efficient, which I think is going to be a big narrative this year. As people might be tax loss harvesting, or any gains they may have made, they will actually have to better APR and then more DeFi functionality. Compare that to staked ETH, so maybe like from Lido or like Coinbase, tax inefficient, worse APR, less DeFi functionality, etc., etc. But he is hugely bullish on it when you compare it to Lido as well. And you can kind of see this in the chart. And we shared this in yesterday's newsletter as well as like chart of the day, which is quite an interesting one as well. Because if we look at it, let's look at it at the monthly. Look at that. Only down. Look, bosh. And obviously something was happening here to full send it back up. But I wanted to highlight the daily because it has been such a strong performer recently. And the areas that I would personally be watching is for it to break in and around where it is now at this like $10 mark, because there's not a lot of area of resistance just sitting in here. So in my mind, looking at just from a purely chart point of view, we've got this kind of like area of liquidity sitting up here, where in theory we break and we fly. Yeah.
We can't see a chart if that's what you've got up.
Is it not up?
No, it's not up.
Well, that's awkward, isn't it?
Just drag it across.
We got it.
It's coming up. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Right, let's take that again. So this is Frax on the daily, and what's super interesting is we might be starting to see a slight consolidation phase in and around this like $8 to $10 range. Now, my view on it is if we can break this little $10.2 here, then you can see where we've got this area of resistance that we've tested back in February 2022, that there should in theory be a lot of liquidity here. So if we do come down, and I'll just zoom in here for you, if we do come and break this zone, which we are slowly starting to do here, then there's no reason why we can't go up to the $16 mark to capture liquidity. It would also make sense that we use these lines here as an area of consolidation, just while price cools down a little bit before a potential next leg up. Now, what I found was super interesting is if we look at the RSI here from back in March, April time, it was super overbought, which was obviously due to this massive spike here. And we've kind of hit it again in, well, basically in the last few days. That, for me, would be screaming out like a bit of an M top for a pullback, for that little pullback consolidation, and then maybe go. But it just shows how strong like the potential Frax narrative has been as we see it just coming. Literally, look, on New Year's Day, it started its ascent. It's ascent to glory. Look at that.
Yeah,
that is insane. And if their roadmap, which should be out imminently, becomes even more bullish and has an even stronger LSD narrative of, you know, how they're gonna map out the next few months, then I really don't see why we can't start to capture some of the liquidity and some of the movement up here. I think this is like such a strong chart, like, and the narrative's there. Like I'm subtly bullish on Frax, even though I don't have a bag. I have been watching it and monitoring it ever since what your boy Pickle mentioned back in January. It's phenomenal to see.
Yeah, nice breakdown, dude. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so I've got a few. I knew I had the charts somewhere. I was just pulling them up because it's on this new laptop. So let me just pop these on for a second. So first and foremost, as per staking rewards, there is effectively $26 billion worth of Ethereum out of the $186 billion market cap stake, so around 13.94%. Just not going off on a tangent or anything, but 72% of Cardano stakes, 71.5% of Sol stakes. I don't know where they're getting this figure from with regards to amount of BNB, because that seems wrong. Those numbers don't add up. But anyway, but yeah, nearly 14% staked. This is what I wanted to show. So let me see if I can zoom that in. So this is the amount. This is the price of ETH in black, and then the total amount of ETH that got staked on the Beacon chain. So you can effectively see here all of this. As this kind of blue curve goes up, this is the amount of ETH staked going up. And then at this convergence point here where we see the price crossover with the amount staked. So effectively, everyone who's staked prior to below the current price that we're at now. So all of these guys up to around here, anything above this line is effectively, let me just put it over here so that works out. Anyone above here is effectively underwater because they've staked at a higher price, and now we're at 1550. So the area under the curve, don't know how to work that out off the top of my head. So they're effectively all underwater. There should be some data on this, up the percentage point of people who are effectively underwater. So what does that actually mean for when people can actually unstake from following the Shanghai fall? Will people realize? I don't know. That's yet to be seen. Will they just restake with Lido or Rocket Pool or Frax ETH and then have the optionality to kind of sell on the open market through Curve if they need to? So kind of bearing that in mind as well, that vast majority of people who have staked will be in the red effectively. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'll leave this link in the description below. So just as a roundup on that, around 14% of all available ETH staked on the Beacon chain, and anything above this price point, particularly here, is effectively underwater. So I don't know. It looks and seems like it could be a kind of sell-off event, but then you've also got to take into consideration that there is a slow kind of queue period that they're keeping quite close to the chest. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to play out. But I also think, what I was alluding to earlier, the liquid staking providers like Lido, Rocket Pool, Stakewise, Stader, Frax, they're going to have to go to war with each other effectively to try and become the largest liquid staking provider on the market. Because if you have a larger share of staked ETH, you can delegate that. If there's any MEV involved there, people are teaming up with block builders like your likes of Manifold or Flashbots and things like that. There's an awful lot of profitability to be made there. And you want to kind of be in the say when those votes are kind of getting passed and you've staked on the network and your kind of nodes have actually validated and turning a profit. So how are they going to do that? They're going to probably pour out a lot of incentives. There'll probably be a lot of incentives for the staking derivative ETH pair. So with regards to Lido, staked ETH, Rocket Pool ETH, Frax ETH pools. But the thing is, what you've got to think about is for pegged assets and stable assets, I suppose you can kind of say that liquid staking derivatives should be kind of pegged because they're supposed to hold, well, they're not supposed to hold, but fluctuate the value of ETH. Is the best arena to trade those assets is by far and away Curve. So the Frax ETH pool, the staked ETH pool, the every other staking derivative paired to ETH pool. So you can imagine that with the incentives that's going to happen over there, with the kind of competition that's going to be happening to become like the number one provider, you've also got to think that Coinbase are in the mix as well, with CBETH. So I can imagine that Curve, and as a consequence of that, Convex will start to see an awful lot of traction as soon as this kind of unravels and unfolds and people have the optionality to kind of trade in and out of the staking derivative and the ETH pair. So that's my kind of second and third order effects of what could happen here.
Grant, isn't there a case for like the ultimate experiment unfolding right now? And it's funny that you bring this up because this is kind of the center of it all, is the fact that you have this deflationary asset in essence. And surely there would be less of an inclination for those stakeholders to want to part with this precious ETH that they know has, if anyone knows, it's these guys and girls that have been staking for this long period of time, which could really land up being a very successful experiment from like in terms of the devs and the way that this thing has unfolded, you know, from the merge to Shanghai to the unstaking, and like you said, keeping their cards close to their chest. And there's a reason why they're doing that. And I'm wondering whether this might be one of those rare, if probably only occasions where we don't have a huge sell-off, but maybe various permutations that could prove to be quite exciting. Well, I'm hoping this is what happens, and for other narratives to emerge around, the continuation of this whole deflationary and long-standing thing. It's amazing how we spoke about, because we did an interview this morning, and we spoke about how this space is just so dynamic, and things are moving at like Mach 2, and you just don't know what's coming next. And I think that there might be a really strong argument for a continuation of this, an LSD, and it won't necessarily be this huge sell-off event. I'm hoping that's the case, and I'm getting ready to fasten my seatbelt for that.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to buy the dip.
Yeah. What you've also got to think about this is, so to actually stake on the Beacon chain, it required a 32 ETH.
Yeah.
Significant, floor, effectively. So what's that, like nearly 50 grand?
Correct.
So not that tells you, it does tell you a lot, but it also doesn't tell you very much. But so the minimum kind of balance on there is going to be roughly like 50k. If you've got 50k in ETH, have you held that from $20, $30, $80, but it also kind of lends itself well to people who've obviously done well quite financially. That's mean a lot in this space because idiots can make money, but also kind of long-term kind of thinkers and long-term kind of Ethereum bulls, I think. So that's something to be said, I think.
Do you mind if I just bring a couple of interesting charts, and this will back up the chart that you've just had here. So we popped this one in our newsletter as well. Okay. So we pop this in our newsletter when we're talking about what is LSD and why do I see butterflies. Now it was quite cool. Hill Dobby he's got like a really cool little Dune dashboard, and back on at the start of January, this was the screenshot. So we can see like here you've got the whales. They're really like the ones that are in green, and then you've got my soldiers over here, the guys that, bless them, they bought the top and they staked at the top, who are going to be heavily underwater. Now, I just updated, obviously, what Hill Dobby, on the Dune dashboard. And what's super interesting, it's gone from 20% people being in the money. Now that the price is pumped, it's come up to 34%. But I think these guys are here. So these are the whales. These are like your early Ethereum, maybe not so much ICO guys, but like they're the big ballers. And the amount that got staked at this $600 mark was huge. But I think it's these guys here. I think these guys were like maybe like the smaller late fish, and these are the ones that I think might panic sell and dump. I think these guys are the smart ones. These have probably been acquiring a load of like loot over like the last year or whatever that they've had it staked. So I think we'll be safe from these guys. It's these ones I think are gonna potentially panic sell, because look at that poor little bugger. 208 people are underwater, almost 5k. I think that'll be one of the catalysts for a sell-off.
Yeah,
I personally know a consortium of, one of the guys, friends of mine, who got in really early with the 32 ETH, and they set up quite a few nodes, on the sub $500 mark, and they essentially created generational wealth for themselves in terms of. So something to consider, which is really important around this thing, is that they've been earning yield. It hasn't been a huge amount of yield, but they've been earning income off the staked ETH for an extended period of time. It's been several years. So a lot of them have actually made their money back. And their perspective is, from that early crew that you outlined in green, their perspective is that they ain't selling. They ain't selling any of it. They're just going to continue with more of the same. That's essentially what their plan is. And I think a lot of the guys that are in that situation are kind of like, well, we've got our annuity income. We've got our storefront. We're earning money. Why should we sell? Makes no sense. It's kind of like killing the goose that's laying the golden egg. So whereas obviously the guys that came late to the party, I think a lot of them will end up selling. They'll be like, fuck this shit. I've been in pain for way too long. My balls are blue now. I'm done. And they'll sell and get out. So
yeah, particularly if they've got like long-term thesis as well. If you bring up like ultrasound money again, it's if they're already kind of in the money, it makes absolutely no sense for them to kind of sell. Like we've had the worst year on record in a long time. Yeah. From like a macro trading perspective, it's been absolutely fucking horrendous. So we actually have hit deflationary, so minus 2,427.
Oh yes, it worked.
So how ridiculous is this? So if we simulate the proof of work, there'll have been another 1.5 million ETH in circulation.
Yeah.
In 127 days.
This is what it's actually all about, is the fact that this thing is now becoming precious. It really is. Even though there is so much of it around, it is becoming precious. And I mean, if there was ever a case for an asset to have like extreme future value, it's this. And I'm by no stretch of the imagination an ETH maxi, just for the record. But this is just compelling. I mean, it's
when 800 when 800 ETH.
Yeah,
800 ETH. So this is saying roughly 5 million ETH per year issuance given current activity and workload, but it looks like we're on track for 750,000 being burnt instead. So it's big numbers. It's fucking ridiculous. Like if you put it into dollar terms, issuance would have typically been 7.6 billion US dollars if at the current price. Supply growth of 3.41%. But now it looks like we're on track to burn 1.2 billion. And we've only I haven't seen gas high an awful lot. It was kind of, I have this little, what's it called? If anyone wants to use it, little DeFi saver plug in there. Basically, that just gives you Equare so you can check. I've only seen that orange once this year. So we haven't really seen large amounts of activity. Obviously, we started seeing prices move a little bit, but I don't think we've seen anywhere near what we were seeing in the last market. So projections, this is probably going to get more is going to get burnt than this kind of average projection. So yeah, kudos. Merge was bullish. It's now coming into
so go ahead.
I was gonna say so now everything we do in crypto, I think is great for like the few people that are still here, that are going to be able to utilize their liquid staked asset. But trying to think about this bigger and like trying to think about this from like more of a like maybe not so macro, but like with the TradFi coming in, how is liquid staking going to be seen to like the outside world? And at like what point is like Mr. Larry Fink or Mr. Bloomberg going to come in, stake some ETH, play around on like Curve and everything? But how is this going to benefit? Is the right way to say it? How is this going to benefit TradFi, or what benefits will TradFi get from it to then come in?
I know that Grant's got a response for you in waiting, but I just want to say something that's very important, in my opinion, around your question, but more from a general perspective. And it's something that Noah Seidman said, that Captain Rational said when myself and Ben spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. And it's the pertinent thing here is that traditional finance has always been this whole thing where the general public has always played the game that, a certain number of people have made the rules to. And that's just the way that it's always been. And it's kind of like we've always been like from a yield perspective. So the example that was brought to the discussion was, with yield, you got the banks and institutions and brokers, and everyone's like taking their cut of this yield that's being generated through these different mechanisms. And you as the investor lands up getting the table scraps. What's happening right now is to answer your question indirectly, is that DeFi, and particularly what crypto is doing right now, is to emulate what the traditional finance world is doing in a way that basically gives you oversight and transparency in terms of how these mechanisms work. What we're doing on chain is merely an accelerated version of what's happened and what is happening in the traditional finance world. And all that's going on right now, to answer your question more directly, is that we get a glimpse of this thing really up close pretty much before everybody else is going to get a glimpse of it. What does that mean? It means that we have the advantage now as users, as rational thinkers, as market participants and commentators. We are now, for the first time in recent times, getting an inside and outside view of this thing at the same time. And that's what's going on right now. How do the traditional finance guys come in and make sense of it? Well, they're going to come in and they already know the rules, dude. They just need to figure out how those rules from the traditional finance world apply. So, I mean, I don't know if that actually answers your question from that perspective. But that's the way that I've understood it, and that's the way that I've actually made sense of this whole thing. Obviously, post that conversation, because I also wondered, like, where's the relevance here? Like, in terms of all this kind of like, like leverage trading and like leverage yields. And, we had an interview with Stader Finance this morning where you can actually, like do lending and borrowing for APRs that you can leverage off of, and how does that work? And it's what banks have been doing. It's what financial institutions have been doing for decades. Now we get to see how these things work on chain with a more hands-on and modern approach to the way that you actually do this kind of stuff. And that's essentially what's happened. It looks like we lost Grant. Man down. I suppose we're just going to have to carry on.
Man down.
In terms of,
I mean, like,
in terms of, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, for me, it's gonna be super interesting to see how TradFi actually comes in and what they're gonna actually be doing, with it. And then if we do actually get all of these like different ETFs passed through, to what extent these ETFs are gonna impact the market, whether it's positive or negative. So, like, if BlackRock get their Ethereum ETF passed through, could they then, in theory, like liquid stake parts of that in order to then continue to generate more yield to then pass back on to their investors?
100%. And guys are already doing that kind of stuff. They're just doing it on a much lower threshold in terms of the amount of capital that they're putting into it. I mean, I get guys on LinkedIn that are following me and the content that we're putting out on LinkedIn, who are running home offices and asset management companies, and they clearly list that one of the assets that they have in their portfolio is crypto. So it's becoming more and more of a requested thing in terms of home offices. Like, I walk in, I'm, in my early 30s, I'm earning a great salary every year. I'm like earning $250,000 a year. I'm kicking ass. I've got a financial advisor. I've gone according to the book and the way my parents taught me. And now I'm sitting in an office where I'm sitting with a financial plan and I'm saying, I want crypto exposure. What do you think that guy's going to do? He's going to go to his MD and he's going to say, dude, we need to get a freaking crypto portfolio here. And we need to actually start investing clients' money. And there's money there for us. And then what do? They land up hiring degens like us. I mean, we interviewed Anson the other day. He got hired by TCG to do research around the very thing that we're talking about right now. So the real world case of application, yield generation, realizing the financial benefit of being on chain is slowly but surely becoming a reality. And you can see it now. It's not just this whole idea. It's a scam. No, bro. It used to be a scam. Now it's very much no longer a scam. The scam has always been the fact that we've never had sight of how these things work and how you loop things and how you generate more income off the back of other people's income that's what banks have been doing since the beginning of time. Anyway, so that's the cool thing about what is unfolding with ETH right now. And if there was ever a case for ETH and its benefit to the financial, kind of like ETH is money narrative, this is it, in my opinion. Obviously Bitcoiners don't like that, but we're not having these discussions around Bitcoin. Like it's a shame, really, because Bitcoin should have ultimately have been the one that was doing this kind of innovation, but it's not happening for Bitcoin on that level.
Bitcoin never really had like devs deving. So like you've got the whole Ethereum network of like developers building stuff. Nobody really built anything on Bitcoin. And I think one of the big things, and I think one of the things that really did hold Bitcoin back, and one of the things that is holding it back now, is there's no like figurehead. There's no like person that's there like driving it forward. You can always say like about Mr. Satoshi and whatever, but he just made it, put it out into the wilderness, and then let it be. But you've obviously got like Vitalik, head of Ethereum, who is there like spearheading the whole movement. You have that unfortunate pleb, Mr. Charles Hopkins or whatever, Mr. Charles Hopkins and Carmongo, right?
Hoskins,
so he's driving that forward. You've got Anatoly over at Solana, and I think these are I think this is why these chains are gonna ultimately push forward in the areas of innovation. Bitcoin will just be that nice like thing that you just have because you have it for have sake. You could compare it to gold or whatever, but I don't really like that analogy. But it's just that thing. It's just Bitcoin. There's nothing. There's nothing really like special about it at the moment.
Yeah. Do you want to bring up some more of these LSD narrative tokens just to look at the charts? I think it would be really cool for our viewers and listeners. So Lido is my favorite at the moment. I mean, I know that Frax is kind of like really, really shown to be probably the one with the most strength. But let's just look at Lido quickly. LDO. I think that's been my favorite so far. I mean, it's seen significant pullbacks on the way up, which is obviously a really good thing. In terms of continuation, but I like Lido. I like Rocket Pool as well. I know Grant's spoken quite strongly about Rocket Pool and what it's achieved, and more from a market fit perspective. I think they've really managed to do some cool stuff. SWISE, Grant also likes. I haven't looked at it much. SD, he's very bullish on as well. Grant's been raving about it. I was looking at the chart yesterday. Obviously, CRV, CVX, Butterfly, Dinero. Dinero is something that we'll be covering. The guys at Redacted have been very hush-hush, but we will definitely be covering it in the coming weeks. We might land up getting a couple of inside scoops on it. We're trying to convince the guys at Redacted to give us some info, but they keep their cards very close to their chest. But I think Dinero is going to be huge. I think Dinero's coming to play the game really strongly and take on Frax from obviously from a stable coin perspective, but then also to give sustainability to what Redacted Cartel has created with Butterfly. And we wrote them off. Well, I did. I definitely wrote Redacted Cartel off, but I should have known better because Sammy's one of my favorite developers. I've been very fortunate to speak to him before directly, and the guy knows his stuff. He knows how the space works, and I should have never have written those guys off when obviously the Ohm forks kind of like they hit their end point, and then they just took Redacted Cartel and Butterfly and they reinvented it. So I think we're going to see some really cool stuff from them. Super bullish on what it is that Redacted Cartel are doing. I was hoping for another dip to come so that I could actually buy some Butterfly. I don't hold any. Obviously not financial advice, but I just really like what it is that they've been doing. Like super cool, super innovative, and we'll obviously get into the detail of it. And I'm being purposefully vague about it because I actually know very little about Dinero, and I don't want to start making assumptions until we see some concrete evidence and information around it. Are you able to bring up some charts, Dan?
Yes. So I've got the. So interesting. I've not checked the Lido chart for a while, but this is what I had. Let's go here. Bosh. So this is my Lido chart, and you can probably see where I've got alerts set up that I've just left and forgotten. Because if it, maybe does, then I might be a little bit more interested in it. But what's really, really interesting is, and you can see this on a lot of the charts, whether it's these LSD charts, whether it's just your other regular like top 100 charts, is it was like at the start of the year. So as we flicked over from 2022 to 2023, on a lot of charts, you started to see a lot of volume. And then this is where like that breakout was. But look at this volume here. Yeah. On Lido.
When was the last time we saw? When was the last time we saw volume? You can see
like how.
Yeah. When was the last time we saw volume like that on a chart? It's been forever. It's not even, you can't even see it.
You didn't.
No. Yeah. I mean, if there was ever a time to kind of flip bias from bear to bull, that would be your convincing aspect right there. I'm actually blown away.
And if you are, you probably could have anticipated the chart. You probably could have anticipated the chart coming back, because we had this massive sell-off here. That's the imbalance in the chart that you'd always be looking to recover at some stage. And you can see by these big green vector candles here that we just absolutely slashed through it. So for me, in my mind now, like if we just get like a little ray, boom, you might be coming down to maybe test this kind of area, which is where I've like highlighted it. You can see a naughty little wick coming down here to collect the liquidity that was in that space before it went to the next leg up, come down. It's kind of like starting to float and fart around on the daily. So we crossed here, come down. How long it's going to stay in this overbought zone, not sure, but with the narrative, it might be quite a strong play. Now, the reason I've not touched this with like any kind of leverage at all is this dirty wick here. Look at that. That is wreckage. That is absolutely slicing and dicing people. I mean, we had a what was it? So that is a 36% move just in that wick on the daily.
Yeah, that's insane.
That would have wrecked anybody that was trying to be like a late shorter. Insane. So my areas personally of interest would be at this $1.76 zone where we've got, a few wicks and maybe resistance here. Or we might see it come down as this 50 EMA comes up. We might see it retest here before any form of like leg up. But yeah, there's a few imbalances to go in the chart. Reclaim maybe somewhere down here before that next leg. But yeah, it's I'd say play safe with Lido, because you got like the exchange, the exchange tokens, but then you've also got some on chain as well, and you see a lot of the whales flipping in and out of them. So
bring up Rocket Pool RPL.
It's a super strong chart. Like rise, retrace, maybe rise again.
I think it's going to rise again. I don't see the narrative doesn't end here. Let's check out Rocket Pool RPL.
Okay, so this is okay. So basically, Rocket Pool listed on Binance like 3 days ago. Look at that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Let's look at the Dex screener one.
Okay. Yeah, I remember like Grant speaking about Rocket Pool
2 weeks ago.
Back when?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago he brought it up, and he's spoken about Rocket Pool last year already. Essentially, when Grant comments around something, write it down, put it on your watch list, and then keep watching it and look for entries. It's just that's just the way it is. That's what I do. It's like he very seldom gets it wrong from that perspective. He really does make great calls, and especially around narratives. Like Grant's like really good at identifying a narrative and then supporting it with great evidence, and then making the calls within that narrative. You see, this is why he likes it so much. I mean, that's the daily. I mean, look at that.
Let's really zoom out. There you go. So we've got all-time highs sitting up at what, about 55, 54, 55 bucks. We've got this beautiful W shape here. Look at that. Boom. Breakout here of like 34, where it's kind of seeing a little bit of pausing. So it's going to be, mate, Rocket Pool is an interesting one. How it goes over the next few months is going to be, it's going to be interesting. Market cap 666 mil, so it's not exactly like a micro cap, but it's not exactly like a big macro cap. The narrative is strong. Narrative is strong. Look at that. And this is the weekly chart, by the way.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Just bring up SWISE.
Bomb.
It's not as smooth as Rocket Pool, right? But still looks good. Go to the 4 hour. 4 hour.
4 Christ, that is an emotional roller coaster. Look at that. But again, like I was saying earlier, like look, January 1st, December 31st, January 1st. That's when everything shot up, man. Now, if you had your eyes on the ball and you were listening, mate, that is 140. Go away. That's 142% gain in 20 days. We're only 20 days in. Like if you'd have just risked it here, bosh. Now, what's on the daily like? So the daily.
So daily is very similar to
back up to 26 cents.
Yeah, I think it's going to go there, to be honest. It looks like it's not stopping.
All that volume.
Yeah. SD. See, I think SD is probably the best value at the moment. Just check this out. This is an interesting chart as well because it's kind of really 20% yesterday.
Which one do you want to see?
Top one. Yeah. Always mainnet. So check this out. I think there's tremendous value here. 9.4 million market cap. So.
Jesus Christ! Look at that. Oh, if you ever look, mate, look at
mate. I mean, I think there's value here. I think there's value with SD. Like right now, if I look at the charts, it's got so much potential. It's crazy. You know, I mean, that's proper.
We need Grant here. We need Grant here to do all that like mathematical stuff where he's like works out the fully diluted value for the price of the tokens, then emissions.
His laptops, he actually just messaged now and he says that his laptop's completely not wanting to let him back in again. So he's actually quite miffed. Anyway, so I think I like SD. Let's move on. I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to let's go and look at, let's go straight to Butterfly.
Yes. Oh, you see, OHM, they're absorbing $1 million worth of Aurora over the next 6 months. It's in their governance proposal.
Interesting.
I think something's happening at OHM. Like, I think there might be something there. Not like 7K again, but
same story.
Strong. Same story. Boom. But what's interesting, all of these like LSD charts, they're hitting an earlier point of resistance. So here for Butterfly, maybe like a pullback and go. I don't know. Maybe something down there would be because Bosch. Where's my pen? Bosch. Question mark.
Anyways, and then
potentially,
I mean, CVX done the same thing. CVX is actually a good one as well to look at. You know, like you can't really go wrong with CVR and CVX. It's kind of like, I think it's probably like it should be up there with the top 10. You know, holding top 10 holds would be those two. They tend to be quite
Oh,
boring,
dude, look
but
at
I
that.
think if you what?
Look
Can't
at
see
this
your
wick.
screen, whatever. I can't see your screen, whatever it is you got.
So, sorry, ladies, I'm just getting used to this whole like screen share now. I've actually got a computer that doesn't run on wood.
Yeah, I saw that when I looked at CVX. Yeah, but CVX has done that. That's kind of like mainnet fuckery that goes down. But listen, CVX for long term is always going to be a good bet. It's like you just can't really go wrong with this. Even if you're buying it at like local tops, it's always lands up coming back, and you just got to be patient with it. It's just one of those.
Maybe that'll go up. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see because like you've got the 50 EMA coming here. So I would expect that to maybe bounce and test the 50 EMA, and then you can maybe make a decision as to what you want to do on the daily.
I don't think it touches the 50. I think it just consolidates and then goes back up again.
Yeah.
It all comes down to what Bitcoin's doing right now. And Bitcoin has shown, at the beginning of the week, we discussed, like, what do we see with Bitcoin? And it's done a little bit of both, right? So we all called it, like, further strength. But the interesting thing is that it also showed a little bit of weakness, and it kind of scared people. But ultimately, it's been strong. And it's saying, you know what? I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking around where I want to be, but I'm not going back down again. And that's really bullish. Like bias is starting to flip right now. Sure, we're still in a bear market. We're still on the downtrend, on the higher time frame. But we're definitely seeing strength now, and we're starting to see strength going into week 3, which is massive, dude. It's massive. So I'm slowly starting to feel like a lot more positive, like starting to get a little bit more bullish and looking at possible lights at the end of the tunnel, wouldn't be a bad thing if it went down below like this 20.5 for a little bit and then back up again. I think it would be actually pretty cool, like just to scare people a little bit, kind of shake it out a bit and then go back up and say, see, and let us know, like, see, I'm serious about continuing with this move. Definitely feeling a little bit.
What I see happening, I think I see the EMA coming up towards Bitcoin rather than the price coming down. But what I would be not so much concerned, but this area here I'm highlighting now, that would be an area of concern to come back, retrace, and then go into whichever way, shape, or form. RSI on the daily, whether you like this kind of indicator or not, looks like it's going to switch over. So we might have some kind of like pullback here, take profits and then go. But I don't know. Let's see. I don't think we should get too ahead of ourselves just yet, but definitely enjoy the momentum.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it's looking good. And it's nice to see some strength in the market, and it makes me happy to see people making money. I've been too busy working to even consider getting involved in anything. So I'm heavily sidelined, but I'm not bitter about it. I'm just enjoying the fact that this is happening, because it just benefits us long-term in the best possible way, and I don't have to be in a trade to reap the benefits of that. I mean, I suppose that's the luxury we have as people who are working in the space, and we benefit directly and indirectly off the positive sentiment. So I'm very happy that people are out there making money, and it comes back to that original thing. I don't mind buying in later on if it's if we're on an upward trend. There'll be plenty of opportunity for us to make money. Sure, I do have moments where I feel FOMO, and it's like, I wish I had bought Frax earlier. It was such an obvious play, and but you just can't do it all. Like when you're sitting in meetings and you're doing research and you're trying to come to terms with complicated projects so that you can talk about them. You don't have time to sit and watch charts. It's just not an option.
Here was my monthly chart. for Bitcoin that I did just on the Binance chart. I was on the Perps one a minute ago. Now, what's really interesting is we're slowly starting to come up to the 50 EMA on the monthly. RSI, right the way down here, is getting very close to touching. I think if we can close this month as green and we can see a little bit more, if we can like break and hold just like this 21K zone here, then I think this is going to be a fantastic, and by the way, I could be wrong on all of this. I think this will be a fantastic catalyst and a fantastic argument to start to become slightly more bullish, because when we zoom out a little bit more, we saw where it broke here and then it was just, you know, chaos as it all came down. But this little trio here is a very bullish candle pattern. If it was the other way up, upside down, it'd be called like the Empire State. So where it just looks like the Empire State Building. And then in theory, if we close in this 21K zone and we have good macroeconomics and like geopolitical stuff that's happening, then maybe we come up to my super bull zone to recover this big red vector candle here up at this 31K zone, which you see in the past, back last year, May, June, and July, sorry, in 2021, May, June, and July, we had a lot of tests on this zone. So that's going to be one of my big areas to see. Flip the 50, automatically turn bullish for me.
Cool. Thanks for that. What do we have in store for the weekend?
Now, somebody had mentioned like the put ratio had gone up quite a bit, but when I checked it this morning, it hasn't. It's either not checked in or he was looking at a different chart. But these two indicators here, so the equity puts call ratio and then the puts call ratio on the SPX, so two things I look at to see whether I think the market's going to pump or dump. There's been times where these have skyrocketed, right? And you know, like something evil is going to happen in TradFi. But so far, maybe a pump into the weekend I'd like to see.
Cool. I think the same. I just think generally there's going to be strength in the market for a while. I'm not seeing weakness at the moment. There have been moments this week where I thought, geez, it's looking a little bit like weak, and then it's just kind of come back and shown really good recovery. And this is quite an interesting time because we've had this rally going now for close to we're going into the third week where we've seen strength, we've seen good movement, you know, since essentially, since the beginning of January. I mean, you've illustrated that with the LSDs, and it's like really interesting, you know, because normally when you get bear market rallies, they're kind of like around for 10 days sort of thing. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at it from a pure TA perspective, but I was speaking to someone who conveyed that, so I can't confirm those time periods. But now we're looking at 3 weeks. You know, if it goes into a fourth week and we've got like a month of like really strong, like bullish movement, does that mean that we potentially like, you know, ditch the bear market after this terrible year that we had, or do we need a little bit more pain before we can kind of completely shed it? I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but it's going to be really interesting to see how particularly the next week plays out.
Yeah. I think we inverse compared to last year. So last year we had a 12% drop on the SPX in month one. I was projecting an 8% increase, which brings us up to one of the key resistance, about 4,100. But let's generally see. Let's see if I'm right. I hope I am.
It'll be interesting. I think we are really entering into an interesting time right now. I mean, in terms of sentiment, which obviously we quite fortunate to get like a glimpse of, and let me stress it's just a glimpse. But we're seeing a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, I've been saying this for freaking months, but even more so over the last month, there's a lot more activity that's happening from a dev side and from a build side perspective. There seems to be more of a decisive process. You know, people actually want to get going now. There's not just a conversation around we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we're busy with our white paper. And it's like, we've done this, we've done that, we want to move. Can you guys help us with content? Can you guys help us with, you know, advisory? Can you guys give us a perspective on what the market is doing? So we're seeing a lot of that at the moment, and it's really cool. It's like really cool to see, and you know, things are moving at a really fast rate. And I think we're about to enter, if the market continues doing what it's doing right now, we're going to be back to not sleeping much again, which is a good thing and a bad thing all rolled into one.
Yeah, I agree. Is
Cool.
there anything else you want to cover, or you?
I think I'm done for today. We're reaching the top of the hour. I think we've covered. I think we've given quite a lot of stuff for people to think about. The LSD narrative is strong. The charts are proving us right on that front. We've been right about the LSDs for several weeks now, and I think it's going to carry on. And I think for me right now, the important question is how long this continues. Obviously, that's very much reliant on Bitcoin, but the most important aspect of my question is, how does this event sell off into the end of it, or until Shanghai, and to what extent does it sell off? I mean, I'm really interested to see that. I have a theory that it's not going to sell off that much because of deflationary assets, and you know, the rewards that staking does offer, you know, the stakers. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything, any charts, or if you enjoy like us doing a bit more TA stuff again, throw it in the comments, or if there's other areas that you want to see, just let us know. Comments, slip into the Discord, slip into the DMs. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll put it out there. As always, we have moved over to like Beehive now for our newsletter. So it's going to be over there. Everybody that was on the Substack originally just gets migrated over, and anyone who lags on the Substack, you'll be migrated over right before the next episode. But like it, subscribe it, share it to your friends. We've got some wicked stuff coming up. A really cool referral, you know, scheme and rewards coming up. There might be some pictures of certain people's, you know, lower extremities. There might be something I'd like to see, an ape of ape. But we can't confirm or deny that just yet.
Yeah, guys, like, subscribe. Let's get the algos going. And if you, like Dan says, if you want us to cover anything, let us know. Come visit on Discord. We're very active in Discord. We don't just tell people to come across. We communicate all day. You know, if you got any questions, if you want to give your thoughts, if you want to tell us that we suck, we're happy to take it on the chin. But we will defend ourselves. So if you're in for a fight, we're ready for that as well. And if you want some love, we'll give you that too. So thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.